For some, it can be a bit much to spend several days stuck inside the smoke-filled casinos of Las Vegas. Every once in a while, it's good to take a break from the craziness. If you're watching this, chances are you're scheming on how to sell the partiers of your group on a day away from the madness. And we have you covered. Not only will we tell you about 3 things in the Vegas area you can do that you may have already heard about, but we'll add a few sweeteners too. Sure, you can visit Nelson Ghost Town the normal way, and that's a respectable and fun thing to do. We'd argue a must if you can, and you'd be better for it. But why not crank it up a notch and take the back way into town, on a road some call the Nelson Roller Coaster? Oh, and there's the tried and true Hoover Dam, which is one of the most amazing things you didn't know you need to see in person. But did you know about the bridge that overlooks the dam and the vertiginous abyss? Or if you totally want to geek out historic style, might we suggest staying in a historic hotel, complete with its own well-done Hoover Dam museum, for those who want a more immersive experience. And last but not least, you've likely heard of the Emerald Cave, and maybe you're even researching taking a tour with a kayaking group, which to be honest, looks like it would be a lot of fun. I'd even try one in the future with friends. But if you're more of a DIYer like me, I can show you how to get it done solo style if need be, in case your other friends are too hungover to do it. Now, I know for some of you this might look a little bit crowded, and I hear ya. Just know this was in the middle of the week and it was a light day. So if that's a concern but you still want to enjoy the emerald green waters of the Colorado River, our last secret is a spot we found downstream where I saw some of the greenest waters of my life. Best of all, this one can be tied in with a trip to nearby Nelson, getting 2 of our 3 recommendations done in one day. So if that sounds good to you, we'll show you all the details. And if you're picking up on how we enjoy doing the same things everyone else does, but just a little more off the beaten path, then consider subscribing. This video is just a launching off point, and you may want to come back later to see our full-length videos for all of today's featured locations from our extensive back catalog. Links in the description. Okay, let's go explore some cool things around Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's start things off with the Old West ghost town of the bunch. One of my favorites, Nelson, Nevada. The remains of a real Old West ghost town, and a rough one at that, known for murder and violence and not very nice people. A town built around mining and greed in the 1800s. The real Old West. Today, Nelson is associated with the Las Vegas tourism industry and is usually part of a fun day trip excursion. It's easy to get to and the way is paved. Nelson is located about 45 minutes south of Vegas, out in the beautiful Mojave Desert. I wouldn't be surprised if by this point in the presentation you'd recognize some of the interesting things they have on display at Nelson. I encountered a group taking wedding photos around the property, which just goes to show how photogenic Nelson is. But if you're like me, you crave the past, the history, the wonderful aroma of an old wooden barn filled with many relics from past eras. Alright, so that alone, I could have spent a whole hour in that. Wandering the property, you'll see many cool structures that have stood the test of time. Stuff to go see back this way, some historic buildings and such, and I mean all over there's historic stuff. There's just something about Nelson. I think it's the backdrop of walls of El Dorado Canyon with splashes of Old West in front of it. A perfect combination, and if anything, it will satisfy the aesthetic side for those of us who like old things. But I told you I'd spice things up a notch, didn't I? For those of you in a more adventurous group. Okay, so you didn't hear it from me, but there's a back way into Nelson. If you want to pretend you're an old-time prospector searching for gold in the Mojave Desert out beyond town. That's if you want to get really immersed. Don't worry, the route is through public lands, but you'll need to procure your own capable vehicle, one with high clearance and 4-wheel drive. Oh, and reliable GPS navigation and wayfinding skills. So here's how we did it. Using an app like Onyx Off-Road, which makes wayfinding seamless, we followed a route another user created called the Nelson Roller Coaster. After a few miles of following power lines, we got deeper into the Mojave, where we came across real mines. If you do this, don't go into the mines and be super careful around them. But they're fascinating for some reason, aren't they? Something about dark, unexplored places calls out to human curiosity, I think. Shortly thereafter, you'll see why the route got the name the Nelson roller coaster. There's a fun section of very steep hills leading into Nelson that is not unlike riding a roller coaster at times. It still remains the most fun off-pavement drive I've done to date, and it was not that technical. I know I alluded to another secret down the road from Nelson, but I'm going to save that for when we talk about kayaking. And there are even more things around this area to do, but check out our other Mojave content for that. Next, let's talk about a Las Vegas tourism fan favorite, and rightfully so, Hoover Dam. Don't worry, this segment is not going to be a history lesson and needs no introduction, but did you know that this next one was temporarily named the Boulder Dam? That's right, during its construction it was originally named the Hoover Dam, but the Roosevelt administration renamed it the Boulder Dam until Congress restored the name Hoover Dam in 1947. And maybe that's a perfect segue into the immersive portion of our segment, because if you want to go deep, you can do what I did and spend the night in the historic Boulder City, just a few miles down the road in the Boulder Dam Hotel. The hotel was completed in 1933 and in its time hosted a long list of very notable people. A few include Betty Davis, Will Rogers, the cardinal who would later become Pope Pius VII, Boris Karloff, Shirley Temple, and Howard Hughes, and various royalty. And I left a few out to keep things moving. So who wouldn't want to stay in the same place royal people once enjoyed? And what's best is, not only is it often budget friendly, but it has high marks on popular travel sites. We spent the night and it has the Cactus Atlas seal of approval. Now the best part in my opinion. Within the hotel is a free museum that you can tour with your morning cup of joe and read about how Hoover Dam is a creation born of the Depression era, and how many brave families packed up and headed out to the hot Nevada desert to start new lives building one of the notable technological marvels of man in the 20th century. I was highly impressed by the exhibits and quality of this museum. Some top-notch stuff, and I learned a lot before heading to the dam. If you didn't know, the dam sits between Arizona and Nevada, and you can walk or drive across it and straddle the state line. And to confound you, did you know that half the year the time is the same when you cross state lines, and the other half of the year you'll gain or lose an hour depending on which way you're headed? True story. Now if you come this far, then I'm sure you'll want to take a tour of the dam, which you can totally do. The tour takes you deep into the innards of the dam, where you'll learn how it works on a guided tour. At times I felt like I was wandering the halls of Dr. Evil's secret base. You eventually go into the actual wall of the dam, straight up to the side where you can peer out of a small window if you like, but fair warning, it might make some woozy. And if that's not enough, either on the way in or way out, stop and check out the Mike O'Callahan Pat Tillman Memorial Bridge, which overlooks the dam, and you can even walk out on it. You do have to walk next to the highway into oncoming traffic, so it makes for a noisy time. And you really need to hold on to your hat up here, with semis blowing by, adding to the already blustery conditions. So if you have vertigo, this is probably a no-go. Even I get a little woozed out standing up there and looking over the edge. Lean over this together! It's an extremely long way down, but I don't think there's a better view of Hoover Dam you are ever going to get, especially since the area is a serious no-drone zone. But up on this bridge, who needs a drone anyway? And if all that walking got you sweaty, you can cool off down by the shores of Lake Mead in a nearby park. Very refreshing. And if that isn't a plan to turn a standard Hoover Dam day into the full-bodied wine of itineraries that will impress and delight your friends, we have one more try to make with you, especially for you who like to keep it cool at the pool. This last one is just downstream of our last location, Hoover Dam, on the emerald green waters of the Colorado River. You've probably at least seen a picture at one point of kayakers hanging out in a mysterious green cave, yes? Well, that would be the aptly named Emerald Cave. You likely came upon mentions of this place when researching Vegas area activities, because the launching off point is very close to Las Vegas. This relatively short kayaking trip is usually associated with Vegas tourism, but did you know the launching off point for the journey is at Willow Beach, actually in Arizona? Yep, you'd be driving over that tall bridge we showed earlier if you're coming from Vegas to get here. There's two good ways to do this one. Likely, if you are traveling from outside of town, you may not have your own equipment or time to research, and will take a tour. There seemed to be no shortage of them, and everyone I observed that day looked fun, and they all did the same route. It's possible you can rent something and do it yourself if you can haul the boats to the launch here. The way I do it is by using an inflatable angler's kayak, where instead of mounting fishing poles to the sides, I have cameras. Pretty nifty, huh? Using a solution like this, you can have a durable boat that breaks down into the size of a suitcase that would probably fit in your trunk. However you want to go about it, the paddle is going to be about a couple miles upstream towards Hoover Dam. There are several places you can pull over on the way if you get hot, and you can take a swim like I did. This was actually probably my favorite part of the trip, to be honest. The main draw is, of course, the cave. And if you're in your own group, the trick is to get in line along the wall leading to the cave, which makes it easy to hold still and wait your turn. Other groups will spend a few minutes enjoying the cave, but things moved along pretty well. I went in at 2 different times, as the cave gets greener when the sun is higher in the sky. I know it's a little counterintuitive, but you'll actually want to do this one in midday and into the earlier afternoon hours for the best results. Alright, I'm going to get a shot of the GoPro underwater, and then we probably have to get going because we're holding up the tours. There are some other cool leftovers of Hoover Dam era history in the canyon here, like the gauge station, and although you could keep going, this is where most turn back. And here's a word of caution. Check the wind reports when you plan to go, because wind makes a huge difference when paddling. The way back from the cave is downstream, so you'd think it would be easier, but on this day the wind was blowing upstream, and paddling into the wind can be exhausting, especially for out-of-shape blokes like me. I got it done and felt good for it, but it was a workout. Just be prepared for that. Otherwise, it was super easygoing and pleasant. I showed you how you have to wait in lines here to get into the cave, and if you're like me, I prefer a little more solitude. Which brings me to our final secret of the show. I alluded to a secret spot on the Colorado River down the road from Nelson Ghost Town. Well, it's not really a secret, you can easily find it on maps, but at least when I've been, the beaches have been light with people. And I almost could not believe how green yet clear the water looks here. It almost looks artificial at times, but I swear, no filters used on this one. You could see a few folks camping right on the shore, and the overall views of the area were among the finest we captured that year. So if crowds are not your thing and you're heading out to Nelson and want Wild West with some cool water, now you know. If you've been paying attention or looking at maps, you'd note that all of these locations are within an hour or less of Las Vegas and are also near to each other. I think doing all 3 things we showed you in a day would be a little bit too much, but you could absolutely mix and match any pair of those and make a fantastic day of it, especially if you keep things simple. But you also see how you can make it a little bit more exciting if you're into that. We hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about fun things to do near Las Vegas in case you need that breath of fresh air I talked about in the beginning. Come back often for more content like this, tell your friends, subscribe, and most importantly, see you next time.